Chipotles in Pennsylvania was shut down after several employees walked out after posting a note. Now, what did this note say? Well, let's read it. Want to know why we're closed? Ask our corporate officers why their employees are forced to work in borderline sweatshop conditions. Almost the entire management and crew have resigned. So there you go. Interesting note. Now, the company has confirmed that a few employees have quit, thus locking out the other workers who the company says were, quote-unquote, enthusiastic to get back to work. I wouldn't say enthusiasm so much as, oh my God, I'm desperate for this job. I need my money. But that's just me. Now, according to Think Progress, the sign was posted by Penn State student Stephen Healy, who had been a part-time manager. Now, he says the conditions at the store have been deteriorating, and he felt that it was the only way to try and affect change. It's an interesting way to go about it. He also said that the store was extremely understaffed, with just 6 or 8 employees on days where they needed about double that, which meant that workers often had to put in 11-hour shifts without breaks. Wow, that's rough. He said, quote, "We've just felt neglected. Working conditions are heinous." Now, while he also says, look, I'm not attacking Chipotles, I'm not attacking the corporation, and I'm actually not looking for a strike, I just want to see better treatment of employees. Interesting take on that. And I want to go to the panel for your take. What do you think? Was this a good idea? Do you think this will help with his goals, or what do you think would solve these problems like these with the terrible conditions at some of these restaurants?
I think it's amazing that they managed to get an entire workforce to walk out, and I think that a lot of people that are working in these fast food restaurants are gaining the same kind of fervor that we saw in the beginning of our workers' revolution back in the early 30s. And this is the ground zero. We just had the sit-in in New York from McDonald's. Now we have this. And it brings a lot of attention to the fact that these people are basically seriously abused as workers. And because people have this notion that working at a fast food restaurant is somehow a teenager's job or a job for somebody who might be beneath them, it's okay to ignore the things that happen to them, which is just insane. So I'm glad that they were to do such a non-violent, blatant act of just, we're sick of it and we're gonna make you guys hear us.
I mean, for me, I think it was obviously the right thing for them to do, because it's going to get some attention, and because there's bad press for the executives, they probably will make some changes. Whether they make nationwide changes is something to remain. In this specific instance, they may say, okay, we've realised that we've understaffed, we'll hire a few more people, and that might solve some of the issues, because some of the gripes of the current employees were that they had a really erratic time schedule and that they were given 24 hours notice whether they were going to be working or not. And to be honest, that sort of gripe, I don't think that's a major gripe. I mean, I've had some jobs where you just got to be at work at a second's notice. I've worked at a summer school where teachers have just walked out because they said, I'm not dealing with these conditions, it's not worth the money. And so, at least in this case, all of the workers walked out. And I think that's probably the most important point, is that if only 5 out of the 8 workers, or however many, walked out, I don't think it would have been the right thing to do. But the fact that they got everyone to walk out is a good thing. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's going to make a huge change, this one individual incident. But as Haven said, there's more and more of these cases coming up. McDonald's recently got sued because of wage theft, and so I think more and more of these fast food, low-income jobs, if more and more people are walking out and showing their outrage at how undervalued they are, then I think it will slowly build up and kind of come to a tipping point where there will be a greater change overall. But I don't think this one instance on its own will make a huge swathe of changes.
I feel like it's got to be pointed out, because this is my thing to point out the detail that we're missing. The whole staff didn't get behind this. The management got behind it, and they locked the door, and that includes on the employees that needed to work and didn't feel like, you know, that this was a strike or a pseudo strike they could take part in. I mean, like, I get what they're trying to do here. I'm all for people fighting for fair pay. I'm not one of these people who thinks that just because a job is, you know, a fast food job, you should be paid as little as possible. But at the same time, like, so they had to work 11-hour shifts or whatever. Were they working overtime and not getting paid overtime? Because then you can say this is like a sweatshop. It's still not, but you can say that it's like a sweatshop. If you're being made to work overtime and you're getting paid time and a half or double time or whatever the law requires in your state, then you get to say, my employer is abiding by the law and paying me fairly, and I don't necessarily like it, and I would like it to be better. But you don't, I mean, don't throw around the terms like sweatshop if, you know, if there's not some serious wage theft or something like that going on.
Well, we don't know that this isn't quite a situation where, you know, if where that didn't happen. We're not sure on that detail. I mean, but there are a lot of different restaurants. You pointed at the recent wage theft story. Wage theft story from McDonald's, and how they and a lot of different fast food companies now use these computer systems to make sure that, and look, you know, to make sure that they're not getting overtime pay for being there. Also, there's, you know, instances documented of where, and I'm not saying at Chipotle's, but at different restaurants where they would fudge numbers to make sure that they don't do overtime and things like that. So what we have here, some of the stuff that you pointed up, is just not quite enough information.
And also, those practices are common practices, just like it's a common practice for major corporations to house a lot of their funds in offshore accounts. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Chipotle, wanting to get the competitive edge over their competitors, like McDonald's, would fudge the numbers or make it so that you're working 11 hours, but they bring you in at different times so that it doesn't count. It still counts as a part-time shift rather than a full-time shift. I mean, they're kind of trained now to usurp paying these people, and there's not even just nefarious ways that they're doing it. Having them pay for their uniforms, that's wage theft. Having people, and if not paying for their uniforms, giving them dirty, nasty uniforms that they have to have upkeep over. That costs money. And none of these companies want to provide the funds that it takes to maintain your uniform, to maintain, you know, transportation, but they want you to sacrifice everything in your life. And I don't know about you, but working 11 hours is not great when you have kids. Working 11 hours is not great when you have a second job. So not having decent amount of notice is an issue that could probably hinder people a lot more than it helps them. So I don't understand how, you know, not giving proper notice or extending people's hours without properly paying them overtime, which they probably don't, is any kind of helpfulness. And I understand that people want to go to work. The lower rung peoples might want to still make their money, but at the end of the day, if nobody stands up, nobody's going to fix this. If nobody says anything about it, if the lower rung people don't see that this is important and their management cares about it, then nothing's going to happen. I would be elated that my management would give a shit enough that they're getting screwed over and also I'm getting screwed over. So it's like there's a balance to everything.
Well, the thing is, I mean, two things. First of all, it's simply bad business. You know, within this story, they're saying, you know, there was only 8 employees at the time when they obviously needed kind of 13 or 14 employees. That means you're going to be giving bad service to your customers. It means they may not return to that place. It's just inefficient, and it's just bad business. Sure, they may still be making money only employing 8 people. But if they employed 14 people, they could be serving more people. They could be making more money theoretically that way. So I just don't think it's bad business. And then also, I have to push back slightly against Jordan, saying that some of the employees, you know, they wanted to get back, and it was a kind of a management's choice kind of to shut down the place. First of all, it was a company saying that their employees were, quote, enthusiastic to get back. So we don't, you know, the company's likely to come out and say that anyway. And secondly, you know, with it being a manager's choice, in many of these fast foods restaurants and diners, a lot of people are promoted up to kind of part-time managers, or they have manager in their title, and they're not really a manager. They're just given that, so they have more responsibilities and barely any little extra pay. They kind of want to promote people up and just give them a new title. So, you know, they're saying that over 2 days, 4 managers had quit. They were probably just normal level employees that had just been given a title and more responsibilities as well. So I don't think it's necessarily just a managerial kind of decision to shut this place down as well.
Yeah, well, and I have to, like, I just want people to understand where I'm coming from. I mean, it wasn't 2 years ago that I was working 80 to 88 hours a week. I would be putting in, 16, 17, 18-hour days at one job because I needed the money and the hours were available. And it sucked, and it was miserable, and that's why I tried to get out of that situation and get a better job. But if and everybody hated that job, and everybody that works there still hates that job. But if people got together and locked the doors or whatever in protest, I would have been pounding on the doors to get in to work at that job I hated because I had 2 kids. I was working 80 to 88 hours a week to support my family. And man, it's just I get it. I'm all for. I even support the $15 an hour wage strikes, not because I think $15 an hour is a wage that's tenable for fast food, but because of how negotiation works. And you ask for more than what you expect to get, unless you're Barack Obama. Then you start at the bottom and compromise from there. But this is just, like I say, they went too far. They're at a 10 and they need to be at a 7. Like I'm all for them protesting it, but like don't throw out the sweatshop work because you had to work a long shift. Like, I don't know, you lose me when you go that far.
I mean, the sweatshop thing is hyperbolic, but when you don't have a word that will properly display the stress and the de-stress that you're in, sometimes you need to do a little hyperbolic language so that you get people's attention. It's like, it's easy to have an option back in 2006 when the majority of our good-paying jobs were still in this country. But what we're seeing now is that more and more of our jobs are shifting into a service sector type apparatus. So you're going to see more and more people who have children or who have other larger responsibilities that are beyond the scope of working at a fast food restaurant that have to work at a fast food restaurant. So if we wait until it's bubbling over and people are ready to do more than just walk out or make hyperbolic language, then that's going to be a problem. There's a time and place for everything. So I think that yes, it's hyperbolic. Yes, it may have, cock-blocked somebody trying to get a paycheck. But if they don't do this now, when it's done later, it might be too late. And it might be done at a time where it'll be a lot more dangerous. And maybe their freedom to voice their opinion on what's happening to them might get curbed. So they can't speak up.